Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. My name is ADIBAH binti AZALI, and I will begin our topic with the Spratly Islands issue. So, the Spratly Islands dispute is a regional maritime territorial sovereignty dispute which involves 6 countries in the South China Sea. First one is Taiwan, Vietnam, China, Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. Underscored by the prospects of large natural energy reserve, control of strategic global maritime areas, and shifting global power dynamics, the dispute has significant international geostrategic, economics, political, and legal implications. So, the conflict in the Spratly Islands involves 6 nations. Each nation has at least a partial claim to the islands. We call the organization, which is ASEAN. This organization has evolved significantly over its 28-year history. Initially established as an economic and cultural organization, it has evolved to address security issues through a regional forum that includes its member nations, plus 11 other nations to include the United States, Japan, China, and Russia. So, we will explore the possibility that the expanding role of ASEAN to now include addressing security issues that might facilitate a solution to the Spratly Islands dispute. With 4 of the 6 nations involved in the conflict now part of ASEAN, and a 5th part of the regional forum, can it provide a framework for the resolution of the conflict? So, we will discuss the conflicts, theories, impact in the South China Sea, and how ASEAN evolved in its ability to address security issues. And finally, we will address the recommendations that ASEAN can provide a solution to the Spratly Islands conflict.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Miss Jamira and my fellow classmates. My name is SITI ZALEHA. Now, I will proceed in explaining my part in the scenario of conflict, Spratly Island. Muhammad Ali Alwi, 1991, stated that the beginning of the South China Sea crisis and conflict was based on the struggle of small island groups, in which the South China Sea has 4 island groups, namely Pratas, Paracle, Macrophil, and Spratly. Of these 4 islands, only 2 islands are up for grabs, namely Paracle and Spratly, which are claimed by 6 countries. Spratly Island is a coral reef island that has many natural resources, including petroleum, natural gas, and maritime products. These islands are located in the South China Sea, bordering the northern waters of the Malaysian archipelago and roughly halfway between Vietnam and Philippines, as well as Brunei, Taiwan, and China. This island became a contender due to its rich nature of natural resources, the aspect of its strategic position because it is located in the middle of the main road east and west, and became an economic resources because it has mineral resources that have not been exploited yet. Due to these factors, the dispute between the 6 countries became difficult to resolve. The conflict of claims over the Spratly Islands began after Japan surrendered and abandoned the Spratlys during the Second World War. Malaysia has shown interest in this island in 1970, but only submitted a claim in 1979 based on the fact that the island is a part of continental shelf. So, that's all from me. Next will be explained by group members. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is WALIYAH HANINAH binti Rahman, and now I'm going to tell you about the related theories. So the Spratly Island dispute is a regional maritime territorial sovereignty dispute which involved some of countries in the South China Sea. In early 19th century, there are scholar named Justin, and he said international law does not exist. The reason why international law does not exist is because at that time, they only focuses on domestic law. And despite that, the fact that the great empires have existed in China, India, Japan, as well as in Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, and that these empires created system of international law as a result of their interaction with other peoples, and also the current international system of law is a result of political development in Western Europe over the past 4 centuries. Secondly, competition and conflict as permanent elements. The proof here is over 100 years of colonial competition that started in 1800s have led to the complication of the ownership of the Spratly Islands. For example, toward the end of the 19th century, Britain, France, and Japan competed for sovereign control over the South China Sea. Even until now, they are still arguing and having conflict about Spratly Island. For example, Malaysia's claims are based on geographic proximity and specifically continental shelf provision in UN clause. It claims date back to 1979 when the Malaysian government first published a map showing the country's continental shelf and extending into the southernmost part of the Spratly archipelago. Lastly, large gap in the existing literature, which has mostly focused on the dispute through realized and liberalized lenses. And moreover, much of the scholarship on the Spratly Islands dispute explain the dispute in realized terms but suggest solution of a liberal or liberal institutionalist character. And also, liberalism focuses on the possibility of abolishing war and conflict through trade and diplomatic ties and through intergovernmental organization. So, theories is important to know what is happening in international nowadays and what kind of theories that relates with the case. As we see, the majority of literature recognizes the major dynamics of the disagreement through realized lenses while proposing remedies in liberalized terms. And there are few constructivist techniques, but none of them go into detail about the underlying identities and views of the disagreement. That's all for me about the related theories. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. My name is FARISHA binti AZNI. So today I would like to present my part, which is in impact of the Spratly Island. Okay, so for today I will like to explain about two terms in term of impact. First is economic and second is politics. Impact that I will explain in terms of economic. Firstly, the more pressure you put on China, the more allergic it becomes. For instance, that I can take is Indonesian advocates taking a middle path. They want to galvanize win on the issue, but they don't want to raise China fears. Secondly, it should include a timetable for demilitarization of the area in order to prevent potential conflict in the future. It can be left up to China to work out its own solution with Taiwan since they both represent. In terms of globalization that I can give as an example, as we know, new sources of oil and gas are required to feed the machinery of economic advancement. Due to the East Asian region economic boom and the expected decline of existing oil resources by the end of the century. In the long term, the nation involved may be motivated to end the conflict in order to achieve joint development and equal advantage by the need for these resources. So now we move into a politics. What I want to highlight here, impact of Vietnam membership in ASEAN.
Okay, the reason is Vietnam has been an important competitor of Chinese dominance in the South China Sea. So, the only country to engage them in armed conflict over the Spratly Island. Vietnam acceptance into Asian membership provide diplomatic authority and make it possible to take an important step towards becoming a full member of the international community. Also give significant long-term economic benefit and is an interim step towards World Trade Organization membership. Hence, as a member of ASEAN, Vietnam joins 4 of the 6 contestants in a common framework as part of an organization geared towards economic cooperation. As we know, this is related into politics, economy and social. So, the Spratly situation, Asian interest in establishing a common position may increase.
Now I'm going to continue for the political globalization impact. The United States also plays a role in preventing military escalation as a result of territorial disputes. Washington's defense deal with Manila could draw the United States into a potential Sino-Philippines conflict over abundant natural gas deposits or lucrative fishing grounds in the disputed territory. The failure of Chinese and Southeast Asian leaders to resolve the dispute through diplomatic means could also undermine international law governing maritime disputes and encourage destabilizing arms accumulation. Now we go to the social impacts. The Spratly Islands also have the social impact, which is biodiversity loss. The South China Sea is a global hotspot for biodiversity and home to important marine ecosystems and thousands of fish. China is responsible for the majority of environmental damage. The dredging process involved in building these artificial islands has significant environmental consequences. Dredging breaks up coral reefs, disturbs ecosystem by changing wave patterns, and disrupts the migration corridor of many species through the South China Sea, including tuna. Sand plumes for dredging can also kill coral reefs by blocking sunlight or burying them. For its globalization impact is ecological risk. China is unlikely to do an environmental impact study on any nuclear power barges before installing them. A runaway reactor could lead to a major ecological disaster. The United States Defense Department report notes that the sea is prone to typhoons, during which most vessels seek shelter. Not just that, pirates and terrorists at sea could also disrupt a nuclear power barges. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you to the previous presenter. Now I will explain about the recommendation or resolution to overcome the Spratly Islands and dispute crisis. The first recommendation is through negotiation in order to resolve the dispute. Conflict resolution through negotiation can be good for all parties involved. Through negotiation, common interests will be made and the arrangement will be the most fulfilled. If the negotiation goes well, the parties will see their connections and respect each other's efforts to keep their relationships intact. Malaysia has set a good example in this. In February 1979, it came an agreement with Thailand to set aside a boundary dispute in the Gulf of Thailand. Instead, it joined hands with Thailand to explore oil and gas in a 7,250 square kilometer area in the disputed Gulf. The agreement was working well. Second resolution is through a political solution, which is also called one-track approach. By adopting a political solution, all parties will discuss the dispute in formal occasions, either at bilateral or multilateral levels. Other measures such as confidence building measures, CBM, can also be applied to avoid further conflict and promote understanding among claimants. Confidence building measures can include two-track approach, such as the workshop approach or undergoing joint projects in the disputed areas, as well as cooperation in energy exploration. Two-track approach is supplements to one-track approach. By holding informal meetings and carrying out cooperative projects, claimant can accumulate confidence and understanding. Next recommendation is by using a third-party mediator. The mediator should manage the communication process between the parties fairly and neutral. Mediation session is expected to identify appropriate issues, clarify any misunderstandings, explore solutions, and arrange any understandings. For example, Indonesia and Malaysia resolved their dispute over the islands of Legitan and Sipadan through the International Court of Justice (ICJ) in 2002. More relevant to the South China Sea dispute was the ICJ's resolution of the dispute between Malaysia and Singapore over 3 sets of uninhabited roads in the Singapore Straits in 2008. The ICJ was able to rule that Pedra Branca belonged to Singapore while Middle Rocks belonged to Malaysia, even though the two are just a kilometer apart. That's all from me. Thank you.
So, for the conclusion, the longer that ASEAN waits to push China for a solution to the Spratly problem, the more advantageous it will be for China. It will continue to wield proportionately greater and greater military and economic power than the combined ASEAN states. It must also be recognized that the Spratly's demand an economic solution more than a military or political one. So, the need for future energy resources to continue economic development in the region surpasses the military or political value of possessing the islands. China's need for foreign technology and capital in order to continue its economic boom that will temper its aggressiveness, and also may be the reason for China to settle for a solution less politically acceptable than what it would prefer. China has shown in the past that it is willing to subordinate sovereignty issues to meeting currently demanding national objectives. So, the nations of ASEAN need to decide if they are willing to settle for a share of the Spratly's resources as a preference to the potential loss of their entire claim to an increasingly capable China. If so, they need to negotiate collectively or only among themselves with the objective of assembling a joint development plan that is fair and reasonable to all parties involved. Last but not least, each nation should then approach China not to present a fait accompli, but to engage China and begin a serious effort towards formal settlement of the conflict. There will be plenty of diplomatic problems on this road, but it is getting late for the ASEAN nations to start the journey. That's all from us. Thank you.